好，弟兄姊妹，各位朋友，晚上好。张木力谈天说地，我们今天这个采访杰尼，加州州长的候选人杰尼姐妹，杰尼瑞姐妹，这个要开始啊。我们现在呢，我和我们的今天的这个 Youth Pastor 林月，他是真道灵粮堂的 Youth Pastor。他来做我们今天的翻译，也是他介绍这个杰尼瑞进入到我们的节目。我们现在先了解一下杰尼瑞的背景。我们先让这个帕斯林来给我们放一下，好不好？给我们 share 一下他的背景。
好的，
我们大家了解一下啊。
Community, and I valued hard work and innovation from a young age. One summer, I picked strawberries from a local farm, delivered them to the neighbors, and kept track of every dollar I made, how I saved it, how I spent it, and even what I gave away. My value for hard work led me to success. I graduated at the top of my programs, an undergrad in economics and an MBA at the Ivy League's Columbia Business School. And I worked at top consulting firm Bain & Company to help solve impossible problems for multi-billion-dollar corporations and governments. In addition, I built 2 tech companies, one in energy and one in finance, with other founding teams. When I met my husband, one thing that got me excited about building a life with him is that he too embraced innovation and hard work. Together, we've built an unusual life. We bought a ranch on which to raise our family, and I built a tech company that, using data and excellent customer service, now has grown to serve over 1 million people and businesses globally. California is such a special place. There's something in the water and in the air here that's like nowhere else. And although I've traveled to 57 countries, I'm always most excited to come home. But in the last 10 years, things have changed, and unfortunately, not for the better. The pioneering spirit that shaped California is no longer shaping our leaders, and our future hangs in the balance. As a business owner, I wake up every year and I wonder, how will California punish us this year? As a mom, I've watched friends and colleagues remove their kids from our public education system, and many have left the state. As a hobby rancher, I've dealt with the uncertainty of water supply and wondering how we could build for the future without anything to count on. Mismanagement is not the only way. Solving impossible problems is what I do. And there are data-driven solutions for California if only our leaders will listen to the people, find the right data, and prioritize solving the real problems. What do we need to create a remarkable future in California? We need 3 things: to live, to work, and to breathe. To live well in California, we need sufficient affordable housing, a world-class education system, and adequate public safety for all our communities. To work well in California, we need businesses to be celebrated and thriving, and we need to remove unnecessary fees, taxes, and overregulation. To breathe well in California, we need to ensure that our forests are adequately managed, that our water is shared between multiple stakeholders, and that our power supply is adequate for years to come. After looking at the problems and realizing that because of them, a growing number of people are leaving California, I said somebody should do something. What we need is a business person, a world-class problem solver. I'm Jenny LaRue, and I'm running for governor of California because this is my state. This is my future, and I'm here to build it. In my California, anything is possible. Let's build it together.
好，Jenny, how are you?
It's good to see you. Hello,
Nice to
Pastor.
see you. Good to see you. 这个张木力谈天说地，我们今天这个特别高兴，我们请到了加州州长补选的州长候选人杰尼瑞我们亲爱的主内姐妹，我们大家亲爱的弟兄姊妹，我们欢迎你们来，我们也欢迎他。
Very happy to have you, Jenny Ray.
I'm so glad to be here. I can't wait for you to ask me hard questions today.
我今天已经预备好要接受你发问困难的问题了。
太好了，那我们刚才看了一个短片，是关于杰尼瑞他为什么要参选，因为我们刚才看到他非常爱加州，加州是他的家园，也是我们的家园。我也是非常爱加州的。我在美国生活了几个州以后，发现加州其实原来是我最理想的生活的州，但现在已经不是了。我们今天的议题呢非常敏感对于基督徒、对于教会来说不太谈的议题。但是我们今天要谈一谈。
So today we will talk about some of the hard questions that Christians won't talk about in the church. And I love California very much, and that's why I'm talking about this.
I love California too.
Thank you. 我今天对杰尼讲两句话。杰尼瑞，今天我们这个群，我的订户大多都是基督徒。
So most of my audience are Christians.
大多都不太关心政治。
Most of them don't care about politics that much.
也是大多都不投票的人。
And a lot of them, they don't vote.
但是他们非常的爱主。
But they love the Lord.
他们喜欢正义。
They love righteousness.
他们当然也喜欢基督徒来参选。
And they love that Christians are going into politics.
那今天我们可以有几个问题要跟你来讨论，也听取你的意见。
So I have a few questions to ask you, I would like for you to give me some feedback.
第一个问题，我们就谈到这个我们这次的罢免州长的这个事情 ，Newsom 的事情。
So first question, I want to talk about the recall Gavin Newsom, our governor.
我们想了解一下的，从您那里了解一下，为什么这个我们要罢免这个 Newsom， 而且这个征集到170万的这么多人的一个选民的签名，而且进入到了罢免程序，我们为什么要罢免他？
So I would like you to share a little bit of why we are recalling Newsom in 2021, and how do we get so many people to sign for the petition and to recall him.
对于我们基督徒来说，在上掌权者，我们是人人应当顺服他的。
For Christians, we know that we should respect those are in government. We should honor those that are in our government.
那基督徒要不要投罢免他的票呢？
So should Christians recall our governor?
It's a good question.
好的问题。
So first of all, how did it happen? And second of all, should we do it?
所以第一，我们这个怎么发生的，而我们要怎么样来做？
There were two phases of the recall. One was in-person signature collection, and the other one was collection of signatures by mail.
在罢免有2个阶段，第一个阶段是我们实际的签名，那第二个阶段呢是用这个邮寄的。
Now, a recall is not easy. You have to get 12% of the number of people that voted the last time in this election to sign the petition, which is a very high threshold.
罢免其实是非常不容易的，你需要在所有的选民里面有12%的人，他们要愿意来签名，并且要罢免这个州长。
But one of the things that we saw in this election is that when Gavin Newsom broke his own rules and he went out to a fancy dinner at a restaurant while restaurants were hurting, families were hurting, and he broke the rules of not wearing a mask in a restaurant, people got really upset about that.
当我们看到在几周前，纽森他自己违反了他自己的规定，他去到一个高级的餐厅，没有戴口罩，然后在群聚，所以人们感到非常的愤怒，感到非常的难过。
Before he broke his own rules, there were only a few 100,000 signatures, but afterwards there were 2.1 million signatures.
在他违反了，在他做这件事情以前，本来只有几十万人他们要罢免他，但是当他做了这件事以后，有210多万个人他们签署来罢免州长。
It was a very impressive, coordinated movement by people from all political parties, not just Republicans, but Democrats from his own party and independents and Green Party and people from a lot of the smaller parties too. So it was a very widespread movement in California.
所以这个罢免的行动其实不只是一个党，不只是共和党的一个罢免行动，其实也包括了民主党，包括很多的草根，包括了很多不同的党，他们一起来集结来组织这一次的罢免。
Well, now you asked a second question. Should Christians recall a governor?
第二个问题是基督徒应不应该来罢免我们的政府官员？
So my answer to that is a recall is a part of democracy.
我的回答就是罢免其实是民主的一个过程之一。
But we have to protect our hearts while we are recalling a governor.
我们要注意的是，当我们在罢免这个政府官员的时候，我们也要保守自己的心。
There's not much different between being a part of a recall, signing a petition, donating money, or helping with a recall, just like there is getting involved in a regular election.
参与选举和罢免其实是一样的，都是在参与一个民主政治的一个过程。
So I would give myself and Christian brothers and sisters the same advice. You can't recall someone who is currently in office and hate them at the same time. You can talk about how their policies are not good for your state. You can talk about the things that they have demonstrated in their character that are not good. But you have to be careful to remain in a place where you pray for them, where you pray that they will do well as a leader and where you do not hate them. But we are still responsible for loving, supporting, encouraging, and praying for our leaders, even if we disagree with them.
我想要鼓励基督徒，就是当我们在做这样的事情的时候，虽然我们在罢免我们的政府官员，在罢免我们的州长，但同时呢，我们的心里面，我们不是要恨他，或者我们还是要爱他，为他祷告。这是我们身为基督徒应该有的责任。
So my prayer has been, God, give Gavin Newsom a new job. Not the governor of California, but a different job, and put someone who is righteous in his place.
所以我为加文纽森的祷告就是：神啊，你给他一份新的工作，不是州长这份工作，而你要让一个蛮有公义的一个人能够代替他来做州长。
非常好。那这个我们知道Jenny。纽森他这个从2008年做州长到现在，他的执政令人失望，因为他不仅是这个他吃个饭的问题，他自己违反了自己，他不能言行合一。很重要的是在加州的社会治安日益恶化。那我觉得好像今年我看到的资料是我们的这个犯罪率已经比去年增加了31%。还有，他也释放了监狱里边将近1万名的罪犯。那这些罪犯现在进入到社区，给社区带来了恐慌。那同时呢，还有他的这个经济的政策，美国的加州成为历史上第一次的人口的负增长。那么大量的搬离加州也说到逃离加州。那也包括加州的大火令我们担忧，那州长的执政能力令人担心。同时呢，我还有一个问题，就是民主党一党独大，这个对民主政治来说，这是一个非常不合理的一个布局。这种格局会导致州长的独裁。我想在这个问题上跟你讨论一下，你怎么看？
Okay, so there are actually a few questions. Pastor Chang mentioned that we've seen that since Newsom became governor 2018, we've seen that crime rates have gone up 31%, and we've seen that just this past year he's been releasing prisoners, over 10,000 prisoners that he's releasing, and we see that there's a great exodus that 182 thousand people have left California, seeing that the fires that are going on, wildfires that are going on in the state, and also that the Democrats have a supermajority, and that Newsom is really he's taking like a lot of control and doing the things that and going with his agenda. So I know it's several questions, but what do you think about all these things that are happening?
Thank you.
Well, maybe afterwards we can put a link to our card in the piece. And Chris, I feel like we maybe had it translated into Chinese. I can't remember, but we could maybe put the link in there because you just answered the question of what I should do to fix California. And I will start at the end of your questions. What we need to do to fix California is to make it a place that people want to come to, not a place that people want to leave.
我想我想在我们的计划里面，如果待会我会把这个网址来 po 上来，在我们的计划里面讲得很清楚。那我想要特别从刚刚最后一个问题就讲到这个加州很多人离开，而我想要说我为什么参选，因为我希望加州能够成为是人能够进来而不是人离开的地方。
So for example, the first part of my plan is that we need to make California an amazing place to live again. And that involves fixing education, and fixing housing.
所以在我的计划的第一个部分就是让加州成为一个非适合人居住的地方，那包括要改善这个治安的问题，包括教育的问题。
For crime, we have had overcrowded prisons in California, but one way to fix that is to create better programs where prisoners don't go out and then come back to prison. But what Newsom has done is just reduce the threshold for crime to release prisoners into the streets. So I have a better plan for criminal justice that will keep our prisons open, not close them, and work on rehabilitating our prisoners, not just sending them back onto the streets.
所以对于治安问题，我们看到了虽然在加州我们的监狱是有非常多的犯人，并且是超载的，但是呢，我们看到纽森他所做的是把这个犯罪的门槛降低了，以至于让许多的不法的事情发生，并且我们也看到在我们的这个我所要做的是在改善我们的整个监狱的系统，让这些犯人他们不是让他们能够有受到好的训练，能够回归到社会。
One thing that I do as a CEO is I get out of my office. So today I was in a conversation with people that were talking about building. One person said he came from another state where it was a one-day process, a simple application, and $100 to get a building permit. In California, the permits start at $25,000. They take months, and that's just to get the access to have them begin to look at your plans. That's not even the full process. And so you can spend $600 to $25,000 just to make a plan for a plan, not even to get your housing done. And so in California, we have homelessness and housing problems that are created because our government is broken and the processes are not simple.
所以我看到了，今天我跟一个人谈话，他说在他的州里面，只要在关于建设，他只要花100块，在一天里面可以完成的事情，在加州要花到超过25000块，并且要花上几个月才能够完成的。所以这代表的在加州，我们有这些繁琐的这些制度，以至于也造成了很没有办法完成这些建设，也造成了衍生出来的包括游民的问题。
I also went to visit a homeless camp, and I sat inside a tent with a few people who are homeless in California. And I asked them if they knew someone from the government, if they had ever met someone who could give them help. And I also asked them if they wanted to move into a house, would they move into a house?
我也跟一些在街上的一些游民接触，我问他们说，如果你可以 你可以跟这个政府的官员们来有一个对谈，你需要什么？那如果也问他们，如果可以的话，你会不会搬到这个房子里面？And
what they said was they didn't know anybody from the government. They've lived on the streets for a long time, but they've never met somebody from the government. And there's only a few people in our town that are homeless. So and everybody knows where they stay. But they also said that they would be lonely if they were in a house all by themselves. And it's important that the people who are making the decisions in an office are talking to the people on the streets.
你知道，在我们这个地方，游民其实在我所在的地方，游民不多，但是这些人他们说他们在街上这么多年，从来没有任何的政府官员来跟他们去接触，来了解到他们的需要。我认为很重要的是那些在位的，我们需要去实际的要了解这些游民他们真正的需要是什么，与他们对谈。
Then you also asked about wildfires. So today I drove to the edge of an evacuation zone to sit with people who are evacuated from their homes in wildfires. And we had a really good conversation. But I have a plan to fix wildfires in California too.
我今天也特别刚刚你讲到的山火，我今天特别到一个正在被驱散的被驱离的一个地方，我就跟这些人来沟通，而我对于加州的山火，我有一个非常实际的一个解决办法。
And there was a person on my team who has worked in the forestry profession for a long time. She explained that what Newsom is doing in the forests is no touch. And that means that our forests grow and get really dense and really thick. And what the entire profession advocates for is light touch, removing dead trees, clearing brush from the undergrowth so that we have forests, but they're not risky for forest fire. So I have a plan to manage 1 million acres of forest per year in California.
我在跟我的其中一个工作人员谈话，他说到纽森他的对于山火的计划就是不要碰他们，这个不要去动这些的森林。但是呢，我的计划是我能够在每一年能够来管理100万这个公亩的这个的森林。
The final thing in my plan is to have good work in California. And as a business owner, I know that the state of California is not friendly toward business owners. And that's a problem for the future. That's a problem for next year, and it's a problem for 10 years, and it's a problem for 50 years from now. And God spoke to me early in my career and said he loves business, and he believes that business is the greatest revelation of his creativity on the earth. And I thought, wow, that's good news.
我看到在加州，我们需要能够好好的工作。而我有一次跟神的对话里面，神告诉我说，business 这个企业是我能够来显明我的创意的一个方式，所以我非常在乎这个企业。
Everything that we're talking about is not easy to do, and it is not free, but it is very important. And that's why we have to change the governor of California.
我所说的这些的每一个问题都不是容易解决的问题，也不是不是能够花很少的钱就能解决的，但是都是非常重要，我们需要正视的问题。
那这个非常好啊！刚才那个杰尼回答了刚才关于大火还有很多，他刚才可能你没有听太明白，他是要主动治理的。那现在那个纽森是不管的，他是主动治理，就要打防火带呀，把它管理起来呀。因为这个在很多的这个极左思想里边，就是这种这个天气暖化。气候暖化，包括对自然的管理的时候，他们基本上是不管的。你要把那杂草管掉搞掉，那这个才能够避免 加州的山火。那还有一个问题就是我们华人比较关注的就是关于教育问题。那我们的现在这个遇到了这个在加州所定的这种所谓的平等法案平权法案。那么所以呢，这个就是一个教育的环境种族的配额而不是靠你考的成绩好坏，而是靠种族的配额。那么大家知道我们亚裔是少数族裔，但是亚裔的孩子们读书的成绩都是非常好的。他们现在在考学校的时候遇到了一些这样的问题。今天如果您当选，你会有解决的方法吗？
Okay, so he's talking about we as Chinese Americans, we value education, and in California we've been he's talking about affirmative action where kids they're admitted to schools based on their race, and so if you become governor, what is your stance on affirmative action, and do you what are your plans on that?
Yeah. Well, the people of California voted, and they voted against affirmative action. And they did that because affirmative action is a short-term solution that creates a long-term problem. And so, yeah, go ahead.
事实上，我们已经在加州人已经对于这个种族配额，我们有投票，并且是反对的。那因为这个种族配额，它其实只是一个短暂能够解决这个种族问题的一个办法，它不是一个实际能够治根的一个办法。
Yeah. What I do believe is in school choice at the elementary school through the high school level, because I believe that students of all races excuse me, should have the opportunity to study at an amazing school, and they should not be limited by their zip code as to whether the schools are amazing. And school choice also creates new competition with original schools to improve the curriculum in those schools. So what I don't want people to hear is that I don't care about education. I care deeply about education, and I want our kids to have really great schooling experiences, but affirmative action is not the way to get there.
我想说的是，我不但是反对这个种族的配额，我更是支持学校的选择，从国小开始是有学校的选择，而不是照着你所住的区域被安排的学校，因为有 school choice 学校的选择，才能够让我们的教育是有竞争力的。
好，那现在这个我们想了解一下杰尼，据你所看杰森的罢免在14号投票嘛，最后截止嘛那么他下台的可能性有多大？第一个问题。那么第二个呢，如果您当选，你在这个民主党占多数的国会还有这个包括政府的官员中，你如何来跟他们协调来能够拦阻一些他们这些非常非常的极左的这些的决定这个使加州不至于这个加州这个不至于就堕落下去。那你会有什么样的具体的方法
Okay, so the recall election is coming up in 2 weeks. What do you think is there a chance of us recalling Newsom? What is the probability of that? And also, so that's the first question. Second question is if we recall Newsom and you become governor, since we have a Democrat supermajority in the government, what would you do to negotiate with Democrats and to what would you do?
Well, let me answer your first question. The question is, what is the chance that Gavin Newsom will get recalled? I want to say 100%. But you told me that the people that you talk to in your audience don't listen to politics and don't vote. And that's what I'm worried about right now.
我想说的是，我很想说，这个机会是100%的机会，我们能够罢免他。但是呢，我所担心的就是呢，有很多的人他们知道这样的事情，但是他们好像我们的许多的听众，有一些人他们知道关于这样的事，但是不愿意去投票，这个是我所担心的。
And I like math, so I'll break it down with the math. In California, 46% of the state is Democrat, Newsom's party, 24% is Republican, and 24% is independent. And then there's a few other people that are out there. In California right now, the highest rate of returns for ballots by a very large margin is the Democrat Party. And I am concerned that Newsom is successfully messaging to and running an operation to get votes in from that group.
我想我是非常喜欢数据，看数据的，那我就分析一下这个数据来给大家听。我们在加州里面有46%是民主党，24%是共和党，那剩下的呢就是剩下的就是没有党派或者是独立的其他党派的。那我们看到纽森他其实是非常知道怎么样来鼓励这些民主党的选民出来投票的，并且我们也看到透过数据来看，其实目前很多去投票的都是民主党人。
So I feel that it's a really valuable we're at a very valuable point in the process, but today we will lose because too few people are voting. People are not giving their time and giving their money to make sure that the candidates that want to reach the voters that haven't been touched yet are going to be reached. And Newsom has much more money than the other candidates do. So I am praying that anything can change. But today I'm worried and everybody needs to turn in their ballots. Everybody.
如果就今天我所看到的数据来看的话，我们是非常可能会输的。就现在来看，因为还有非常多的人没有去投票。那而且纽森呢，他其实跟其他的候选人比起来，他有非常多的资金去来做宣传，所以当然，我在祷告，接下来的几周会看到有神迹，并且会看到神能够成就美事，所以我要鼓励大家，真的要去来宣传，并且告诉大家要投票。
Now I have an answer for your second question. Does that sound good? Can I go ahead to the second question?
Yeah, 那我回答刚刚第二个问题。
Okay, so the second question is, how will I work with a Democratic supermajority?
要如何来跟一个民主党多数的这样的一个政府来合作？
Newsom actually answered this himself.
纽森其实他自己也回答这个问题。
The question was, what can a governor do in 1 year with a Democratic supermajority?
就是在1年里面，接下来1年多的任期里面，一个新任州长怎么样来跟他们来合作？
He said, well, they could veto laws. The supermajority, even though they have a high number, don't agree on what to do if a governor vetoes the laws. And so it's unlikely that they would override a veto.
所以第一个，其实州长能够有一个权利叫做否决权。这个否决权呢，就是呢，即便这个法案过了，他可以有否决的这样的一个权利。这个是州长能够有的。
If Newsom stays in office, there will be vaccine mandates and vaccine passports in California. But if someone else is in office, we will leave it up to doctors, counties, businesses, and people to decide.
如果我们让纽森继续做州长，我们就会有这个疫苗护照，我们会有这个这些的新的政令，关于肺炎的这些政令会通过。那我们不希望这样的事情发生。
And I don't know if you know this, but the California Department of Public Health is working right now under a state order that Newsom wrote, but they don't actually enforce their own rules. The two places that enforce the rules are the licensing for beverages, the ABC licensing board that does alcohol sales, and Cal OSHA that does workplace management. And what they do is that when Newsom has a new rule, they don't have to go through the legislature. They can just go knock on everyone's door and tell them, you have to close, you have to pay a fine, you're not following the rules. And that's what people are more worried about than what the legislature is doing right now, because those groups have the authority and the power to shut down businesses, put families in their homes, and make people really afraid of being free.
所以我们看到，其实现在很多人在看到公共卫生局他们所定的一些规定，但是这些规定其实他们不会去实际的去强制人们要来遵守这些规定，其实是有另外2个部门，我刚刚没有听清楚他所讲的，一个是 ABC
the ABC，
的 ABC， 他们会强制的去家家户户去来实行这些纽森他所签下的这些的政令，所以这个是人们所担心的。
So the governor sets the culture. The governor has a direct authority over a lot of things that the legislature doesn't touch. I will have a budget that I will do, so I can choose how the state's money is spent. There's actually a lot that the governor can do with or without the legislature. And so how will I work with them? We'll have a conversation about what we're trying to get done. We may or may not agree. And on the things that we agree on, like water and wildfire, we'll make a plan. On everything else, we'll work separately from one another.
所以其实州长是有很大的权利。州长呢，第一个他是定调整个州的一个文化，他能够来传达一个 message， 能够来传达一个讯息。那么州长另外一个是他能够控制这个整个州的预算是由州长来定的。那再来并且我们可以开启对话。
And what I will ask them at the end of the year is your life better? I will ask the voters of California after 1 year, is your education better? Is your city safer? Is your housing better? Is your business freer? Are you breathing cleaner air? If those things are true and people are coming back to California, give me 4 more years and I will do even better for you.
所以在这个1年之后，我会问加州人，你们的生活有确实改善了吗？治安是否有变好？犯罪问题是否有解决？如果你们认可我的话，看到我所做的一切，那我想他们会相信再给我4年的任期。
But there's one last thing I have to mention, because Gavin Newsom is a partner with fear. And when he thinks that people are afraid, he makes them more scared. But my job as the governor of California is not to partner with fear, but to help people through education and hope and a great plan for the future to be unafraid. And that, I think, is probably the most important thing that a governor can do, is demonstrate a way forward without fear.
其实我认为最重要的是，我看到加文纽森他所做的就是来制造恐惧、制造恐慌，让人们觉得透过恐惧来控制人。但是呢，我跟他不一样的是，我是带来希望的。我想让透过教育，透过正确的资讯，透过一个对未来一个美好的一个计划，来让大家知道我们的未来是可以更美好的。这个是我想做的。
And I want to say one last thing, because the Lord told me early on in my campaign that Republicans love righteousness, but Democrats love justice. And he loves both. And what he said was, find the places where they match. Righteousness and justice go together.
我想说的是，我在有一次主对我启示，就是民主党他们是喜爱公义，而共和党是喜爱公正的，所以这2个其实都是神所重视的，而神要看到这2个其实都被体现出来。
好，非常好。Jenny， 那我知道你是维吉尼亚大学毕业的学生，这个非常荣幸，我儿子也是维吉尼亚大学毕业的，你也在维吉尼亚大学 你也在哥伦比亚大学读了这个你的 MBA， 而且你还是一个商界的杰出的一个女性。如果你当选啊，你这个会把公司放下，家庭也很多的时间，因为你还是3个孩子的母亲，可能是据我了解，那你的丈夫和家人支持你的选举吗？这是第一个问题。那第二个问题呢？你是这个基督徒，我不知道你在哪一间教会聚会，那你们的牧师会支持你选举吗？他会说你是搞了政治吗？还是基督徒不应该参政？他是什么样一种态度？我想了解的，因为我们华人教会呢，对这个基督徒的参政，甚至谈论这个话题都是个禁忌我想问你的看法。
Okay, so I read your background. I know you graduated from Virginia University. My son also graduated from Virginia University, and so I also see that you're a businesswoman and you have 3 kids. My first question is that does your family, your husband, does your family support you going into politics? And the second question is, I know you're a Christian and you go to church. Does your pastor, leaders of your church, does your pastor support you or encourage you to go into politics? Because in the Chinese community, sometimes we hold back or we don't want to get into politics. It's kind of taboo to talk about politics in Chinese churches.
I will answer the second question first because it's a shorter answer, and then I'll go to the first one.
我先回答第二个问题。
So my pastor does support me because he believes that if God leads you, you should follow. And he has heard the story of how God asked me to lay down my life to run for governor. And that's one of the values that he sees is important and worthy.
所以我的牧师是非常支持我的，因为他听了我分享我的故事，神怎么样呼召我，让我把我的生命完全的献上，而我的牧师非常看重这个，就是能够为神来奉献自己，做来荣耀神的事。
But my pastors are worried about dividing our church over politics. And God gave me a word to give wisdom for this. He said, there is a difference between government and politics. I love government, but I hate politics.
但是我的牧师们，他们也担心，因着我参与政治，会使到教会里面有产生分歧、产生的不同意见、产生分裂。那神就给我一个特别的启示，就是呢，神是喜爱政府，但是厌恶政治。
So my pastor and many other pastors that I've met have done what I think is the responsible thing for government, which is that they have encouraged people to vote and they have introduced people to candidates without saying, God says you have to vote for this person, because we don't want to manipulate somebody away from free will. So I think that's an important difference.
所以我觉得在看到我的许多的属灵领袖，我的牧者们，他们所做的是鼓励人们来参与，并且去投票，但是他们不会做的是掌控人，告诉他们你一定要投这个候选人，你一定要投哪样的候选人。我认为这样是不对的，因为我们每一个人都有自由意志。
So at my church, I've met with a group of children, a few hundred children in the school. I've also met with the 55 and over group, and we had a big event where people from the church were invited to come. And so I've really felt the support of the church without it being a division inside the church.
所以我们教会也组织了一些活动，有跟小孩来跟一群的孩子们来见面的这样的活动，也有跟年长者来见面的活动，得到我们的教会有很多的支持。但是我们这样做，在不造成这个分裂的情况下面来做这样的事情。
Let me go back to your other question about my family and the support.
那我要来谈论我的家庭。
I don't know who was more worried about this, me or my husband.
我不确定到底是我还是我的先生，对这个事情更担心。
But I can promise you that while I have voted, I also, like many of the people that you are a pastor for, have not wanted to get involved in government.
其实过去我像许多人一样，其实我是不愿意去参与政治的。
But when God told me that he loves government, it began to change my heart.
但是当神告诉我说我是热爱这个政府治理的这个事情的时候，我的心开始转变。
So I started to pray, God, send great people into government. You know who they are. Put your hand on them and encourage them to go.
所以我跟神祷告说，神啊，你一定要让这些好的人，有才能的人，公益的人，他们能够进到政府里面。
And starting in March of 2020, I began to pray for Gavin Newsom. And in April of 2020, I began to pray for Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas.
所以在去年的3月，我开始就来为纽森来代求。那4月开始呢，我就为这个在德州的这个州长来代求。
But I did not think I would ever run for office, and nobody in my family thought it was a good idea.
但是我没有想过我会参与政治，并且我的家人里面，我的家人也没有想过我会来参与。
But my life is an adventure with God, and he had, I think, a different idea.
但是我的人生就是与神一起冒险。那我想神常常有跟我们不一样的这个旨意。
So in September last year, my husband and I were in Sacramento. God had spoken to me about a lot of different things. And I went to him and I said, I feel drawn to run for governor someday very long from now, 2030, 2040. Will you pray about it and see what you think?
所以在去年9月的时候，我和我的先生我们在沙加缅度，那神就启示了我一些事情，所以我跟我的丈夫我说，我想神应该要呼召我去竞选州长，但我想可能是10年后、10年之后、20年后的事情，2030年以后的事情。
And my husband and I don't do anything without agreeing on it, especially something as big as this. So I just waited for him to give me an answer.
所以通常我和我的丈夫，我们都在这些重大的决定，我们一定要有一致的想法，我们才会去做这些的决定。所以我就在等候他会给我一个答案。
I secretly hoped he would never give me an answer, and we would be 100 years old before he thought about it again.
我心里面暗暗的希望他不会给我他不会给我回复，可能我们到100岁以后，我们到100岁，我们都不会记得这样的事情。
But 2 months later, he came back to me and he said, the answer is yes.
但是2个月后，他告诉我说，我的答案是的。
I said, what is the question?
我说问题是什么？
And he said, if you want to run for office, I will support you. We need good people in government.
他说，如果你要选州长，我会全力支持你。我们需要有好的人在政府里面。
In February, when I felt like God was asking me to run now, I was crying and thinking of all of the sacrifice this would cost me, my family, and everything else.
在今年的2月，当我知道神要我来参选，在今年来参选的时候，我在神面前大哭，因为我说我会失去一切，我所拥有的一切，我的家庭，我的事业。
But the Lord told me that I did not have to choose between obedience and my family.
但是神告诉我说，你不会在顺服我和你的家人之间做选择，我不会让你做这样的选择。
And earlier in my life, he told me I did not have to choose between being an excellent businesswoman and my family.
因为在过去，在一开始，在我年轻的时候，神也告诉我说，你不会在你的事业和你的家庭中间做选择。
But the end of the story is interesting because 5 days after I said yes to God, I will run because I will not withhold anything from you. I was on a Zoom call, just like this one, with my husband.
但是在我回应神了以后，5天之后，我跟我的先生在Zoom 上面谈话。
And we were with our group of intercessors. And by the way, if any of you who are watching this now or later want to become an intercessor with our team to pray for California, we would love to have you. But we were with the intercessors and they asked him, what do you think about Jenny Ray running? And he said, I'm mostly in support.
但那时候我跟我的先生还有一群的代祷者，我们一起在网络上来一起见面。那当他们问我的先生你是否愿意支持他，我的先生说我是大部分我是大致上支持他的。
That made me a little worried because it didn't sound like he was 100%.
当时我有一点紧张，因为他好像不是完全的支持。
So I just let it go. But the next day he came home from work and he was crying.
我当时就没有想太多，但是隔一天他回到家的时候，他在我面前大哭。
My husband is a really big man.
我先生是一个非常非常强壮的一个人。
And he doesn't come home crying.
他很少会哭泣。
But at work that day, God told him, put down your tools. I want to talk to you.
但是他在工作的时候，神说：“你放下你的工具，我要对你来说话。”
And God said, this is happening. Get on board or get out of the way.
神对他说：“这件事情会发生，你要不就全心参与，要不你就到一边去。”
So when he was crying, he came home and he said, I'm so sorry. I am 100% on board. I will not get in the way of what God is doing.
所以他当那一天他回来的时候，他说我非常的对不起，我非常的抱歉，我会100%的来支持你。
My children are also excited. They said that they want to run for governor someday.
我的孩子们其实他们非常的兴奋，他们说有一天他们也要选州长。
But it's a journey as a family to figure out a new way of life because we've had the same way of life for most of our time together. This is a new way and it's a different way for sure.
但是对我们的家庭来说，确实它是一个非常不一样的一个经历有很多的改变。过去我们都是在过去我们习惯一种的生活模式，现在一切都变了。
我们听了一个很美的见证。这个杰尼刚才谈了他参选的心路历程，还有他家庭的得知。我们看到他有一个非常美满的家庭，这是一个基督徒特别好的一个生活的模式。不管我们做什么，我们都有一个好的家庭。你看他们夫妻很相爱，孩子们也特别的有上进心啊，孩子也想选州长。我觉得非常好啊。这个我们很少关注参选人的品行和他的家庭，我们过度看到他的魅力和他的主张。但是我觉得做一个知行合一的人。做一个这样的人是我们神所喜悦的。我也看到他的参选其实有上帝清楚的呼召。
Yeah, so I really appreciate you sharing your story. Oftentimes we see a candidate's charisma rather than seeing their character. And I really see that you have a great family and you have a great character. And I believe that it's God's will. God called you into this.
基督徒其实有2个使命的，一个是福音使命，我们把福音传给万民；第二个是我们的文化使命。那这个我们就按照神的托付来管理神的创造和他在地上给我们的托付。
I think Christians, we have 2 missions. One is to spread the gospel, is the gospel mission. Another one is the cultural mission, is to spread godly culture.
这两个使命是不矛盾的。
These are not contradicting.
因为如果杰尼作为一个州长，他也是个基督徒，他的见证会影响很多人归向耶稣的。
Because if Jenny Ray becomes a governor, and as a Christian, she will influence many people.
像耶稣说：“你们是世上的盐，你们是世界的光。光呢，就要放在灯台上，要照亮一屋子的人。”
Because Jesus said that you are the light of the world, you are the salt of you are the salt of this world, and your light should shine among people.
所以他可以在参选中为主发光。
So she can glorify God, be in politics.
我看了他几个这个参会的视频，我看到他在那里边都在荣耀神，他在那里这个把感恩颂赞归给耶稣，同时我也看到他的祷告非常的 powerful 的祷告，非常的有从神来的那种恩高的祷告。我发现这是一个这个基督徒跟世界的选举人是不一样的地方。
I see many of her videos when she's on the platform, when she's on stage, she's giving glory, she's worshiping God, and when she prays, I can sense the anointing. I can see that she is influencing people and giving the glory to Jesus.
我也特别鼓励我们华人基督徒，虽然我们不能像杰尼那样去参选，因为我们有文化的问题、语言的问题，我们可能很多生在中国，但是我们可以去投票。
I encourage Chinese Christians, a lot of us, maybe we can't go into government, we can't go into politics, but we can vote.
把票投给神所喜悦的人。
We can vote for those that honor God, that is in God's favor.
那我刚刚接到选票，我的选票已经接到了这是我的选票。
Just got my ballot.
还有我太太的。
My wife's ballot.
那这个也有这个填这个选票的注意事项。
And the instructions.
那我会投票。
I will vote.
我会投 yes.
I will vote yes on the recall.
弟兄姊妹要记住，这个票不能投 no， 你要罢免的票要写 yes。
You have to vote yes in order to recall.
然后在后边的46个候选人中，你选一个。
And on question 2, there are 46 candidates. Pick one.
因为我都不认识。
I don't know these candidates at all.
那我是40多分钟前认识了杰尼。
I just met Jenny 40 minutes ago.
她是我主内的姐妹，所以我会投她。
She is my sister in Christ, and I will vote for her.
我不在于她当不当选。
I don't know if she will make it. She will become governor.
我赞赏她的勇敢和使命。
But I appreciate and I honor her courage and her response to her call.
那据我所知，她是这个46个候选人中前面的3位之一。
And from what I know, that she is among the top candidates.
唯一的一个女性。
And the only women among the top candidates.
一个代祷者。
And she's an intercessor.
一个福音行动者。
And she is a preacher of the gospel.
一个有清楚呼召的去选州长的人。
And she has a clear calling.
不是为了自己的名利地位。
Not for her self-interest.
不是为了自己的野心。
It's not for her ambition.
是为了神的托付。
It's because of God's mission for her.
所以我会选她。
So I will vote for her.
当然你们有自己选举的权利，这是你们的自由，你们可以选任何一个人。
But you can vote for anyone you want.
那我的问题是说，杰尼姐妹，如果杰尼瑞姐妹，如果你当选了，这个现在你觉得你离当选还有多远？你们前几位，你的信心有多大？现在？
So I have a question for you, Jenny Ray. How do you feel about this election? How do you feel of what is a what how do you feel of you being elected?
I feel like the same that I told you before. If today the election closes, it doesn't matter because Gavin Newsom is elected. So I am working on making sure that more people vote yes on the recall, and I am reaching millions of people that no one else is reaching out to. So I feel like I have really good chances, but it will be a big surprise to some people because even in the top candidates and being the only woman, I am a political outsider. I'm a businesswoman. I'm not experienced in politics. So I will surpass expectations in the election. And I am praying every day that God will give me insight and wisdom on what to do. So even anything can change between now and the election, but I feel like my chances are very good.
像我刚刚说的，如果是今天选举的话，我认为机会是不大的。我认为可能纽森还会继续当，但是我们还有一些的时间，而我认为我的机会是大的，因为我去接触那些其他候选人不愿意接触的这些族群，有上百万的这些的其他的这些族群是很多候选人没有去接触的。那当然，我如果顺利的当选，是很多人会感到意外的，因为我不是一个政治人物，我是一个局外人，我是一个企业家，一个企业女性，那很多人会感到意外，但是我认为我是非常有信心的。
And I feel like David in the battle with Goliath. Who is that guy? Gavin Newsom, who is taunting the people, who is bringing fear here. All it took was one small stone. And that's important, I think, for us to remember now.
我就想到在圣经的故事里面，大卫看到歌利亚的时候，好像我看到这个纽森说，这个人到底是谁，要来带来恐惧在我们的州里面，而我只要用一个小石子，我可以把它打倒。
And I think a vote is like a small stone.
对我来说，一票就像是一个小石子一样。
明白，太好了。那这个是这样，那我们华人的基督徒在加州大概将近有10万人左右。
I know that in California we have about 100,000 Chinese Christians, over 100,000 Chinese Christians.
大多都是不投票的。
A lot of them don't vote.
那我们这个节目就希望这个鼓励我们弟兄姊妹出去投票。
So today I want to encourage our brothers and sisters to go and vote.
这个不是搞政治，这是神的文化使命。
This is to fulfill God's mandate in government.
如果我们这10万人都在这上面写 yes，
if all of us say yes on the recall.
如果我们这10万人都在这上写 Jenny Ray，
if all 100,000 of us vote for Jenny Ray,
梦想就会成真。
we can dreams will be fulfilled.
我们还有10几天的时间。
We have about 2 weeks.
盼望大家祷告。
We will pray hard.
为主打一个美好的仗。
We will win this battle.
就像那个大卫跟歌利亚的战斗一样。
Just like how David fought Goliath.
他们是靠刀枪剑戟，我们是靠万军之耶和华。
They rely on weapons, but we will rely on our God.
好，杰尼瑞姐妹，我会为你祷告。
Jenny Ray, I will pray for you.
盼望你这个能够当选。
I hope that you will be elected.
也让神带领你。
May the Lord lead you.
让你这个存谦卑的心与主同行，主就必然带你得胜。
That you will have a humble heart, and God will give you victory.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one last thing to say. I will not be perfect, but I will be a good servant of the people of California, and that's my heart, to serve well.
最后我想说的是，我 我不一定是一个完美的人，但是我会成为一个好的服侍者，来服侍加州的人。
Thank you, Pastor, for your vote. I hope you feel more hope than when we started talking today.
Thank you. I pray for you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
拜拜。这里边有几个问题我要回答，接您下去了啊。有人问说那个翻译的张牧师是你儿子吗？这个不是啊，他是真道灵粮堂的 Youth Pastor， 青少年 Pastor， 他是这个传道人。也是他找的我来到我们这个张木利谈天说地来谈这个大选的事情。我们谈的也冒一定的风险。刚才我们也没有这个特别的批评民主党。刚才也说，杰尼瑞说，其实民主党和共和党都是民主政党。我们也不是说，但是这个杰森表现的真的是很糟糕我们是对人我们没有对党。所以呢，另外我为什么要采访杰尼瑞？因为她是主内的姐妹，这里面选举的人呢，唯有她公开的宣称她是主内的姐妹。那么其他人都不说自己是基督徒的。虽然靠前的几位这个包括加州的议员海利，还有这个圣地亚哥的市长，他们也是很棒的。当然他们在信仰方面还不能跟杰尼瑞来相比。杰尼瑞真的是非常爱主的一个姐妹。我相信她这次不管当选不当选，对她是一个非常好的历练她未来会成为一个加州的明日之星在政治上。那么她有教会弟兄姊妹的祷告，有牧师的为她的支持，还有家人的支持。我相信她会在未来这个神所呼召她来这个治理加州改变加州这个方面，他会做非常大的贡献我相信。所以我们大家为他祷告。好，亲爱的弟兄姊妹，我们今天节目就到这里了张木利谈天说地。如果你喜欢这个节目，你就这个订阅、点赞、按小铃铛。那这个很多问题弟兄姊妹问的问题呢，因为时间关系，我也没有让杰尼瑞来回答你们的问题。那我是盼望弟兄姊妹为他祷告，希望存公义、好怜悯、谦卑的心与主同行。同时我们也能够这个投下我们神圣的一票这是上帝的。所以华人要学习民主，学习在一个民主的国家怎么样来行使自己的民主权利，否则我们会被边缘化，会被这个不重视我们的声音。所以我们常常觉得人家不重视，因为你不发声，他怎么重视你呢？所以我们要发声，我们要敢于发声。那么同时做华人的基督徒也要敢于这个发声。这个说基督徒去选举就是从事了政治，这是不对的我刚才讲了，这个政府是神所设立的，神设立了国家，设立了政府，也设立了君王。但是神也给我们神儿女的权利，我们君王我们可以选他，也可以罢免他，这是上帝给我们的权利。所以盼望弟兄姊妹行使好你的权利，怎么样在你的信仰和你的在这个社会生活中有一个平衡，而不是这个看不到说上帝在让我们在这个世界上所扮演的角色。其实我们在世界上，我们也是美国的公民，也是选民嘛。那如果我们基督徒都不选票，都不去选，那肯定选票的人都不是基督徒嘛，那他们选的候选人一定是不合神心意的，对不对？那基督徒，所以既然如此，我们为什么不去选呢？我们一定要去选一定要去选。那同时呢，如果你自己愿意参选，如果你是我们教会的，你愿意参选，这个我也支持你我也支持你，我也为你祷告。那我最近有个老朋友叫熊燕，他是个牧师，89年天安门学生被通缉的21个学生，跟李鹏对话的那个北大的法律系的这个研究生。他后来在美国在美军做了18年的军牧，现在这个转业这个回到这个地方，所以呢他就要在纽约选美国的国会议员。他给我打电话问我支不支持他，我说当然支持，我为你祷告。他说我代表哪个党？如果我代表民主党支持我，说你代表民主党我也支持你。 你代表共和党，我也支持你。我不是支持那个党，我是支持你这个人，因为你是我的朋友，我了解你，所以我希望你不管在民主党、在共和党都 OK。你要代表民主党的话，那你就在民主党里边告诉影响那些民主党的议员，他们投的选票能够合乎神的心意，因为你是牧师嘛，所以呢，如果你是我们教会的会友，你愿意参选，不管你是选这个社区的你的 committee 里的 member 还是选这个你的校区的委员呢，还是选你的县呐、区啊、议员呐，那我们都为你祷告，我们都支持你。这个我觉得这是上帝的旨意。好的，张伯利谈天说地，我们今天就到这里，我们下一时间再见啊！愿上帝祝福大家，晚安。